despite the fact that you pretty much do my job for me when you edit and add your notes in. We'll go ahead and do a coach's eye analysis on this because a few things that I want to mention. So right here in the beginning, I felt like I was watching a Natick run. You're walking a nice little stroll through the park. Oh, here we're going to stroll over here. Oh, throw my hand into the tunnel. This is agility. There is running. There is motion. There is speed. Increase the distances between your jumps if you need more motion, because think about what a forward send is. By definition, a forward send is deceleration on the approach. And if you don't have any deceleration, what's helping to cue the turn? I mean, if you just watch your stride length here and your footwork, there's never a point at which you run up, stop, and then turn and leave. So there's a stride, there's a stride, there's a stride. And even then, when she is lifting, you're just starting to leave after physical commitment. So the goal on this kind of like the commitment aspect is that you cue this, and when you see her going, you're already turning and heading downstream. So when you get mental commitment, leave before physical commitment, and that's going to help to prevent, not eliminate, but some of this angled jumping here. The other thing when I worked this through this week is I actually, for a lot of the students, put a barrel right on the back side of that wing there, the side that I wouldn't see. It looks like you have your little water jug here. I don't know if that's for her or what you're trying to do for shaping, but you already mentioned that the water jug didn't help. Put that barrel on the other side and force her to kind of go out and arc. I did that with several students this week who did this drill, and that seemed to really help. So again, the main thing here is I want to see run, drive out of the tunnel, run up to that wing, stop, cue that commitment, and then turn and leave. Not this kind of constant walking, because cruise control at 5 miles an hour is still cruise control. It's still a constant rate forward. And what we want to see is the decel, and kind of the next level of that decel is leaving before physical commitment. All right, here's better. So right, watch that right foot there. Okay. It lifts right here to head back, and she is just lifting. So we're getting better commitment and trust on that so that you can go into the front. Little bit on her line. All right, so if we think about, okay, she should be on that inside edge, which she is. There's the tunnel. You know, you're a little bit on that path. So as you step back, she kind of, you know, that little step back this way causes her to go that way, and now she's swerving around you there. So a little bit on her line, but that's where trust the jump. So I think with regard to the speed and the running, it just spread out your jumps. So I don't do a great job on the CRCD. So if ever you feel like something's too tight, go ahead and open it up. I mean, in your case, Jean, I can say this because of working with you so regularly. I want to see you run. I want to see her run. So I would rather you err on the side of the distances being big. You know, put your 25 feet between jumps than to have the distances tight. We don't want to, you know, encourage her to over-collect or overturn. We want to get her opening up and extending. Now, I pause here on this front cross because what I wanted to see is as you moved lateral here, which was good, she actually did add a stride there. She came in pretty tight, but not enough to really create a nice tight bend. So on this one, I thought your position was pretty good, but she jumped a little long. That's just taking that recall work and applying motion into it. So I think, you know, in this moment, once I saw her diving, like if we were working this live, what I probably would have had you do, going back here, sorry about that. Oops, hold on. There we go. Right there. Okay. Is I would have had you set her up, stand here, and do a couple double bend recalls. So I would have had you bring over double bend, double bend, double bend, double bend. Okay, now let's add back in the motion. And I know you've been working through some of those recalls, but that just simply needed a revisit. So the wrap being tricky here, all right, clearly having a little bit of difficulty. That's why we did this drill, and that's why we did them in this order. Doing the pinwheel and introducing this jump makes the 180 harder. Doing the 180 and introducing this jump makes coming through the gap. If you were to reverse that order and do them in another way, things would be different. And with that wrap, she's not giving you, that one was pretty, incredibly horrible jumping effort. But on the ones that could be better, again, right here, put that barrel. Okay, make her want to shape and go around and already come over this with a left to right jumping arc. So don't be afraid to get that out. She's understanding the double wrap verbal. She's not doing as tight of a wrap as I know I've seen her do, but I think that's just the momentum of coming out of the tunnel. Front cross back in, easy peasy. I mean, the front cross, that's why we would choose to front cross. That's essentially why the the modified pool came about. So on the rear cross, I don't think it was beginner's luck. I mean, I think you have two factors. One, you have been working it, so don't sell yourself short on that. But two, your rears have gotten, I think, a little bit dependent on that toy placement, because when she sees that toy out there, she does kind of know, okay, go towards the toy. Just like we've talked about with the manners minder and the idea of having two manners minders. I'm pausing for just a moment. You can do that with the toy. So throw your toy out there to help lure for the rear cross, but also have a toy here. All right. And make sure that she's actually turning on the rear cross because of the motion and not just her figuring out, oh, there's a toy here. And then if she does, in fact, turn to the left, that's when you would then say, get it. But then you could also come up decel, curl it to the right, and then say, get it for that toy. So I noticed that a little bit last week, and that on some of those rear crosses, she would turn because of the toy. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's luring. That's what we do to help them in the beginning. Just be careful that that doesn't then end up cueing your rear cross, right? I don't want to get in a situation where she's like, oh, I'll rear cross when the toy's out there. So I don't think it was beginner's luck. You have one like right here where you go into the rear cross, you do fade the toy out and you throw, all right? And then work towards on the rears being able to have a little bit more deceleration, meaning put her in the tunnel, run up, and then wait a little bit, because the more deceleration you have here, the tighter that turn's going to be. If we look at what happens on this one, you actually kind of accelerate into the rear. So you're walking, and then as she goes, you run. All right, kind of increase. So she should actually go relatively wide. So it looked like the toy placement on that one was actually very appropriate. But remember that you have 4 types of rear crosses: forward motion rear, lateral motion rear, deceleration rear, no motion rear. Make sure that your rear cross motion is consistent with what you're reinforcing. So as her forward send gets better, you will be able to better do those deceleration rears. Now, this whole thing here, I don't really know what was happening. I don't know if she was, like you said, thinking about the toy. I don't know if she was doing too many threadles and she was thinking too much about the threadle. I'm not really sure what happened on that one. There's an example of one. Watch with the motion and the toy placement. I didn't think your rear cross warranted quite as much forward cue as you ended up doing, right? Because watch this, I'll slow-mo it. You are kind of running and then you stop and rock back here, yet she continues to run forward. So make sure that your motion on those rear crosses is consistent. If you're decelling, it should be a tighter turn. If you're accelerating, it should be more of a forward motion rear. Okay, so be consistent. I know you're just trying to reward the turn to the right, but I don't want you to find out, 6-8 months from now that you only have one type of rear cross, and that is, jumping in more extension or driving more forward. The advanced drills, piece of cake. Okay, I mean, yeah, she had a few mistakes, but relatively speaking, she's doing her backsides and her threadles really good. I did think you had some verbals that were late. You got caught up a little bit on the wrap and the loop of the first jump of the threadle, and the here was a little bit late. So like on this one, it wasn't until she landed that she was then hearing the here. All right. So I think that one was like you can see her react a little late there, headed for the front side and then come in. I do actually agree with her on a couple of those that the here command, when I was listening the first time through with volume, was a little bit late. So as soon as you do that second loop and you see that she's going before she physically lifts, like you want to go ahead and get that here verbal out. So just something to keep an eye on. All right. And then being consistent, that was good on your go, 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 and getting her to drive forward, which we haven't worked on since last month. Being able to get that in, being able to differentiate the curls. I mean, the threadle stuff looked very nice. Nope. Head check, handler focus. There we have that nice turn away. There you are, back to walking. Back to your walking. Again, I know there's not a lot of room on this, but like on that last jump, feel free to drive out. So in, or here, right? So she's doing a good job, it seems to be differentiating between the threadle slice and the threadle curl. There you go, good girl. And, as we said, use some props if needed on the jumping. She's not doing a bad job, but I would be curious. I kind of question whether or not she's just smart enough to realize that added stride is going to slow her down. Today, coincidentally, not on anything pertaining to this, I did a timing of a dog who I thought should really add a stride. So we timed the dog how the dog wanted to do it, and then we timed the dog by forcing the dog to add the stride. And when the dog added the stride, it was actually slower, which tells me that the dog was saying, I can do this with a bit more extension, and I'm fast enough and can hit the ground and turn well enough that this is the most efficient versus shortening. So it actually would be interesting with her to say, okay, if we get her to add the stride here and turn tighter, is it actually better? Because it's going to be shorter yardage, but you're going to have less speed coming out of that turn. So certainly something that would be interesting to play around with and think about, not necessarily just on this, but just in general. I think she's a pretty smart dog, pretty efficient dog. She might be doing what is best, even though when we look at it, it seems like that turn should be tighter. So good work on this. Lots of stuff to do on these little drills. I try to kind of throw all sorts of things, but basically you had 9 different drills on this, similar to the wrap handling for May. Certainly stuff you can go back and revisit, and as you already did with the rear cross, a mirror image of as well.